Hello and welcome to Here's to Your Health. I'm your host, Veggie Patti, and it's my pleasure to bring you information on healthy living. On today's episode, our guest is Patty Obrzut, and she is the Assistant Director at the Penrickton Center for Blind Children. So welcome to the show and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So tell us, what is the Penrickton Center?
Sure. Penrickton Center is a private nonprofit agency for children who are legally blind, who also have an additional disability. So many of our children have cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism, and they're visually impaired on top of that. So even though our children are between the ages of 1 and 13, developmentally they're acting like children, maybe 5 years of age or younger. And what we're trying to do is help the children be more independent and learn to do things for themselves. So we have 3 main programs to reach that end. So we have a 5-day-a-week residential program, so the children can stay Sunday night through Friday afternoon. They stay during the day, they go out to school, come back to us in the afternoon, sleep overnight, and then all their parents pick them up on Friday and they go home for the weekend. Or we have a daycare program where children arrive sometime in the morning, as early as 6:30 in the morning up till 9 o'clock at night. And they do what you would do at any other daycare center, except that we adapt for their visual impairment and the disabilities, trying to teach the kids to be more independent. And then we also have consultation services as well.
Okay, great. So how long have you been in existence?
We got started in 1952, so kind of an interesting story. Back in the 50s, children with disabilities were not allowed in the schools. So we had 3 families, the Penmans, the Rickers, and the Wigingtons. That's where you get Penrickton from.
Okay.
And 2 of the families had visually impaired children, and they weren't allowed in school, so they got together with the 3rd family and said, let's start an agency that'll help children who are visually impaired. So they first met in the basement of a church, then they got the land donated that we're on currently. So we're located in Taylor, Michigan. So the city of Taylor donated the land. They got a group of people together, got the money to raise to build the building. They built the building in 1952. In 55, we were established there, and we've been there ever since. So to this day, it's kind of nice to know that we got started by a grassroots group of people. Mm-hmm. We started to work with just the visually impaired, but then in the 70s, they passed the special ed law, which allowed children with visual impairment to go to school. So we started having children leave our facility because they didn't need to use us as much anymore. So that's when we started taking children who were visually impaired with at least one other disability. So we started taking children who might have cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and now we're really at the place we are today, which is our children are more considered multiply disabled. So they'll have 3, 4, 5 different things going on, not just the visual impairment.
Okay, that's a wonderful organization.
Thank you.
So you said you're a nonprofit?
Sure, we're 100% nonprofit. So the unique thing is that parents don't have to pay anything for our services. We get no state funding, no federal funding, no money from United Way, don't charge insurance companies anything at all. So we raise our money through all kinds of different things. We have Girl Scouts that do canned food drives. We have motorcycle clubs that do motorcycle rides. A little bit of everything. Our budget's $1.6 million, and we raise that on an annual basis all on our own. So we're really the only place in Michigan that works with blind, multiply disabled children that doesn't charge anything for our services.
Okay, that's wonderful. So how many children do you help each year, would you say?
Sure. It depends. A lot of our children start when a parent first hears about us. So sometimes we have children start in our daycare program at age 1 or age 2. They can stay until their 13th birthday, depending on what a parent is interested in. So sometimes we once had a child start on her first birthday and she stayed till she turned 13. We've had other families not hear about us until maybe their child's 7 or 8. So most families, once they find out about our services, for example, they might start out in daycare 1 day a week, 2 days a week. Sometimes that moves up to 5 days a week. Then as their child gets older, they might decide to have them sleep overnight, 1 night a week, 2 nights a week. They might end up moving up to 5 days a week. So a lot of our children pretty much stay until their 13th birthday. But it's 100% parent choice. So if a family wants to come pick up their child today and go out to Chuck E. Cheese, they can. If they want to keep them for the week and not bring them till the following week, they can do that too. So it's really up to the family how much time their child spends with us. But most kids have a set schedule where they're there at least once a week, 2 days a week, or 5 days a week, depending on the family situation.
Okay, and like how many children do you have the capacity for to stay like through your program that stays overnight?
Sure. Overnight we can have up to 33. For daycare we can have up to 21. Right now we're working with 20 children, 20 families. Most people are kind of surprised. We service really Wayne County, Oakland, Macomb County, but we can have children from as far as their family is willing to drive, a child can be in our program. So we've had children from Ohio, we've had children from Grand Rapids, Traverse City, we have a current child from Flint, Ann Arbor area. So about an hour and a half to 2 hour driving distance is what most families are willing to drive back and forth. Our daycare program, most families are really within about an hour driving distance because no one's going to drive an hour, turn around, go back home.
Right.
Come back at the end of the day, pick up their kids. So that's what's nice about our residential program. Sometimes we'll have a family, let's say, from Grand Rapids, and we've had families drive, let their child stay 2 days, they go back home, their child sleeps overnight one night, and then they come back and get them the next day. That way it's not so much driving back and forth.
Okay, great. So how would somebody find out about your program? Do they learn from doctors or?
Yeah, most of how the public finds out about us is really word of mouth. Like this program is great for that very reason, is that we spend all of the money that's donated to us, we 100% spend on the kids. Mm-hmm. So because we get our money through service clubs, Knights of Columbus, Lions Clubs, Rotary, the community kind of knows about us. So most schools know about us. Many of the physicians that work with multiply disabled children know about us. But sometimes we've had families find out from someone in the neighborhood, a Lions Club member, a Knights of Columbus member. So it's really great to be on your show because if there's ever anyone out in the community who knows a family member of somebody who has a special needs child, maybe we can help that child. Like I mentioned, we do consultation services, so a child doesn't have to stay in our program to get our services. So sometimes we have families that will drive in for the day, we'll just play with their child an hour or two, and then offer them suggestions on how to try to teach their child to feed themselves or bathe themselves or toilet themselves. Or I'd say one of the most difficult things for some of our children is just learning how to play with toys. If you have a child like ours, maybe they can't roll over, can't sit up, they have difficulty holding something in their hand. What we specialize is how do you change the environment so that the kids can be active in that environment and learn from that environment. We do one of our main focuses is we do an active learning program, which sounds simple, and it's that children learn through activity. So how do you create an active environment so a child with special needs can learn? And so we adapt everything in our building. If it's pumpkin carving, we have kids, scooping the pumpkin guts. We have kids cutting out the little, triangles for eyes. But we have kids who just don't even want to touch a pumpkin. Or so we might treat it like a ball and roll it back and forth so that they, get the idea of playing with a ball and then a pumpkin, and then we start carving the pumpkin, and oops, they put their hand inside the pumpkin guts and they start touching the pumpkin guts. So it's how can you create an environment where kids want to learn and are engaged by the environment.
Okay, that's great. So when somebody first comes to you, I know you mentioned you do consultations. Let's say somebody finds out about your service. What is the first step for the family? Like, what should they do? They hear about you and...
Yeah, the first thing they can do is just contact us. So our phone number is 734-946-7500. They call up. We're one of the few places when you call, a real person answers the phone, and just say what you're looking for, and then they'll direct you to the most appropriate person. But usually they'll be guided to Lori, who's our social worker, and she'll kind of give a family member an overview of what we do and what kind of help are they looking for. It could be a grandparent who's calling us up just saying, what kind of toys should I buy my special needs grandchild for Christmas? Or we've had people in the community call up who have visual impairment problems. How do I get a white cane? How do I adapt a toy so my child can play with it? And so Lori would start out talking to them, and if she needed help, she might go over to our occupational therapist, who might also offer information about maybe wheelchairs or equipment that our kids use. Some of the specialties that we have at our center is we have an occupational therapist, we have a dance and movement therapist, a music therapist, we have a nurse in the building, we have a volunteer coordinator who works with all of our volunteers, an activities director who handles all of the activities the kids play with. So when someone calls, whatever they're looking for, we're going to hook them up with the right person to try to give them that information.
Okay, great. Now, you said you have a volunteer coordinator. So what do you ask volunteers to do, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, it really depends on what a volunteer is looking to do.
Okay.
Because we know that everybody has a certain amount of time that they can afford to give. So we have volunteers that do work directly with the children. If they're interested in working with the children, they have to go through some background checks and things like that because we are a child care agency. But we do ask our volunteers that work with children to commit to at least one day a month. For example, we have our therapy dog program where someone brings in some therapy dogs. Martha's for Angels brings in their therapy dogs, and our kids play with the dogs. So we want our volunteers to go through training on how to lift the children, how to introduce them to a dog, how they should help, and really how they should not help. It's kind of a funny thing, but people tend to help our kids too much. And the goal is to try to teach independence. So it's how do you step back and let the kids do it on their own as opposed to you helping them. So we might introduce them to, we have computer programs that our kids can activate the computer, and that needs to be done one-on-one. So if a volunteer wanted to do that. So Charlene, who's our volunteer coordinator, might ask a person, do you want to work with the kids? These are the types of activities we have. Does it match up with your life? If that's not something someone wants to do, we have volunteer events going on all the time. So if somebody wants to help at a fundraiser, maybe passing out water to motorcyclists or helping to sell raffle tickets at an event, you know, that person could volunteer once or twice a year, or we could call them up when we have a mailing going out and we needed help stuffing mail, that kind of thing. So we'll kind of guide, our volunteer coordinator will guide people into what exactly they'd like to do and try to hook them up.
Okay, that's great. So now you have brought some items with you.
Sure.
So I'm going to let you explain what these are.
Okay. Well, the first thing I brought was I thought it would be fun to show the audience. What I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, Patty, is putting on a blindfold. Because the first thing is all of our children are visually impaired. People are surprised, though, some of our kids do have vision, so they might be able to see large objects or colors. They might even wear glasses. But for this, I'd like you to just be blindfolded. And what I want to do is I want to show you 3 types of items, and I want you to see if you can guess what they are. Okay? So of course I covered them up because I didn't want you to see them ahead of time. So, but here I'm going to give you a few rules. First of all, I want you to be a child who's in a wheelchair, so I don't want you to be able to get up out of the chair. And the second rule is you can't talk. So I'm going to make you one of our children who has a disability where they can't speak at all. So I'm going to give you the objects, and I just want you to learn whatever you can from them in a short period of time. So here's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you can take off your blindfold, and I want you to tell me what objects you had.
Well, the first one it was cylindrical. That's what it felt like, and it felt very smooth. I don't know, I would guess some type of a tube or something. The second one felt like metal ridges or something like that. So I don't know, I would think maybe like a kitchen utensil of some sort. And the last one felt like it was a wood object.
Okay, so that's pretty good. You know, there's 3 objects, and you could kind of tell me their shape and what they were made of. So what were you paying attention to more, the object or me moving your hand?
I was paying attention to the feel in my hand.
Most people, it's kind of interesting. So I'm going to show you what the 3 objects were. So the first object was actually something that you blow up balloons with that blows out air. So that was 1. And then the second object was a metal whisk. And then the third object is actually called a clacker, and it's a musical instrument that our kids play with that goes like that. So what a lot of people do with our kids who are visually impaired is the first thing they do wrong is they do something called hand over hand, which is they take somebody's hand and they make them feel an object. And when someone does that, most visually impaired people are paying attention to the person moving them and not the object. And so why don't you know what all those things were? I mean, you knew they were a tube, and you knew it was wood, and you knew it was metal, but how come you didn't know it blew air?
Right. Well, part of it was only in my hand for like a second.
That's the other thing, is that I was kind of a bad teacher or instructor in that I only gave you a few seconds to feel it, so you can only remember a few things about it. You did pretty good with even knowing they were plastic, metal, and wood. Sometimes if I do this to someone, they don't even remember what they were. They were so busy paying attention to me. So one of the focuses of our program is to have an active learning program where I would actually give this to you and let you play with it. And with our kids with special needs, for example, it might take them 3 months to figure out that this object does this. And I would have to allow them that time to figure that out. And by doing that, you'd learn that this clacks and this blows air and that the whisk makes a metal sound and is dingy. Then eventually I can come back and tell you this is a whisk. But first you have to learn that it just makes a sound when you do that to it. So that's kind of at Penrickton Center. We'll take common everyday things that people don't understand are toys, like a metal whisk, and introduce it to the kids. Just let them banging on pots and pans and just figuring out what metal is, what wood is, what leather is, because the environment is full of smells and sounds and different tactile sensations. Like if I asked you what are most toys made of, what would you tell me?
Probably nowadays plastic.
Yeah, most toys these days are made of plastic. So we want our kids to explore what metal is, what wood is. And so if we only let them play with toys, they think the world is made of plastic. And so that's why we play with toys, and we also play with things that are not toys but can be toys at the right developmental level.
Okay.
So if I have time, I can show you another little toy. Okay.
Time,
so then the other thing I had you do was I had said that some of our kids can't speak. So for a lot of our children, if they are in a wheelchair, we have kids who maybe can't roll over, who can't sit up. They also might have cerebral palsy, so they might have difficulty moving their hand. So it's very common for a child with spastic cerebral palsy to keep their hand fisted, so they have trouble moving their thumb like this, and it tends to stay in the palm of their hand. And if their cerebral palsy is more severe, then their the fingers will come over like this, and they have a hard time opening their hand. So then how can they reach out? The other thing they'll do is they'll keep their hand here and they don't reach out for toys. So if this toy has an on-off switch, they have difficulty getting to it or turning it on or turning it off. So now just go ahead and hit that little switch. So when you hit the switch, it makes the toy play a song. And he'll go through his little thing here, and then he'll be done. So what we do is we actually take a little adapter that we get at a local store, and it fits into this plug. And this is about a $25 switch, and we'll hook it up to that toy. But we can also take the same switch and hook it up. Oops. Told you what I was going to say. But there's two little switches here, and I can hook up two switches. So again, if you hit the switch,
mint chocolate chip.
it says whatever I record on it. So I could give you two switches, and if we're at the ice cream parlor and I say, Patty, what kind of ice cream do you want? And you could say mint chocolate chip or chocolate chip. Or if we're at the fruit store and I say, what kind of fruit do you want? Banana or strawberry? Then our kids can hit the right switch, and now they're communicating even though they can't speak.
Okay.
So it starts with the basic being able to do an on-off switch to activate a toy, and then it gets up to can you activate a switch to communicate, and it can go even higher than that where you can activate a computer.
Okay, great. And what are some of the other things that you've brought?
Well, to try to explain what it's like to have some of our kids' disabilities, I brought this little gadget which is called a bumble ball. And then this is a plate that we use with our kids to try to teach independence so that they can feed themselves. So one of the things that's unique about this is if we put food on the plate, when the kids go to scoop food, do you see how the food ends up on the spoon? If I didn't have a rim here, the spoon would go like this and the food would fall on the floor. So this is about a $20 plate, and it looks like no big deal, but it actually helps our kids be able to keep the food on the table. But what's hard for our children, again, if they have cerebral palsy, sometimes they want to hold a spoon and they want to bring it up to their mouth, but their hand won't listen to them, even though they know what they want to do. So to kind of represent that, I'm going to have you wear a little bumble ball on your hand. So just Velcro that. And all I want you to try to do is to bring one of the Fruit Loops up to your mouth, even though I know you don't eat Fruit Loops, and that's okay. So to do it, I'm going to turn on, where's my little switch? So now only when it's shaking should you try to bring that up to your mouth. So go for it. Let's see if you can get one anywhere near it.
Hardest part is getting it on the spoon.
Yeah. So what basically, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So what will happen with our kids, it's not that their hands, we do this activity a lot with like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and they think it's very funny. And we always explain, yeah, it's quite funny to watch us do it. But some of our kids, we're out in public and we're trying to eat a meal, and they're trying to scoop the food onto their spoon, and when they bring it up like this, their hand will turn because they have cerebral palsy, and the food will fall. And it might get really frustrating that they can't feed themselves. And so what we'll do to try to help the kids out, So like I was saying, none of the kids have cerebral palsy where their hands are shaking like this. But it's what it's like if you wanted to feed yourself and your body will not listen to what your mind wants to do. So to try to make it a little easier, this is just a regular spoon, but we might put a strap on the spoon, and this is just elastic. It costs us about $1 to make these things. So now if I have a child who can't hold a spoon in their hand at all, they don't have to be able to hold it. And then if they bring the food up like this, at least they don't have to worry about holding the spoon. But then over time, the strap allows you to learn to hold your own spoon, and if I need to help you, then we hold on to the end of the spoon and we can guide it up to the child's mouth. So that's some of the ways we're trying to teach the kids to feed themselves. Or if they can't do any activity, we're trying to teach them to do it as opposed. It's so much easier to just, as a parent, feed your child, but what we want them to do is learn to do it themselves. And it doesn't matter if they make a mess, it's can they do it on their own.
Right, so you want to teach the independence.
Sure, it can take some of our kids 2 years to learn to feed themselves. Or it could, you know, we have one little boy right now, Jack, who it takes him, maybe he can do it 3 times in a meal, bring that spoon all the way to his mouth all by himself. But we're all so excited when he does it because it means so much more that he's doing it himself as opposed to us just feeding him.
Right. That's great. Do you have anything else that you wanted to show us?
Oh, sure. I have a whole bunch of things. I'll have you do one more thing,
Okay.
which, well, no, let me show you this too. This is, I brought Winnie the Pooh because he's cute, but also to show you one little gadget that we use with the kids. Again, it's about that active learning. So we have a lot of children who maybe can't stand upright on their own. Maybe they can't sit up or they can't walk. So how do we get the kids to do that? So this is called a hopsadress. It was invented in Denmark. That's why it has the unusual name. But well, it's a little harness that we might put on the kids. So when I stand up Winnie the Pooh, ooh, like this, then what will happen is this little harness gets attached to the ceiling, and then we put things underneath the kids' feet, maybe a bucket of water, maybe ping pong balls. So when the kids move their feet around like this is attached to a track that's in the ceiling, and all of a sudden the kids are walking across the floor just by moving their legs because the harness is supporting them and holding them upright. Okay. So we're one of the only child care agencies anywhere that has this track system that allows the kids to get up and walk all over the room. And when I say walk, for example, we have one little girl who she can't roll over at all. But we put her in this harness and she can move her legs and go around the room all by herself without anybody helping her. But when you take her out of the harness, she can't roll over. So to us, it means so much to us that she can get from one place to the room and the other if she wants to, using this piece of equipment. And nobody has to help her. She can do it all on her own. So it's kind of a cool gadget. It's about $700 just for this hopsadress. And the track that we had installed was over $100,000. So one of the things that's interesting about the active learning program that we offer is that we actually educate the community about active learning. So we have many teachers that come from different areas. I have a teacher that was just emailing me today from Windsor. I just got back from Niagara Falls and was educating 40 teachers there about how to use some of the active learning techniques with special needs children in their area. So we do a national conference where we've had over 150 people come throughout North America and they attend, and we try to teach people how to do what we're doing at Penrickton Center in other environments. So we're really proud of that program. And many parents use Penrickton Center because we offer active learning.
That's wonderful. So what is something, like what's the most important things you want the public to know about your center?
I think the most important thing is if they know anyone that has a child with special needs, especially multiple special needs, and they're visually impaired, to just contact us. Hopefully we can help a family out with suggestions and ideas, or maybe we can provide them with daycare or residential services if they're interested. So that would be the most important thing. The second thing is that we are a nonprofit charity, so we get no money from the state, federal government. Everything's through donations. So we always need the community's help to continue with fundraising events if they want to volunteer, if they want to help out in any way, shape, or form. We like people to see what we do, so we invite anyone in the community to come out to our center. We're on Eureka Road. It's 26530 Eureka Road, and it's Taylor, Michigan. And you don't need an appointment. You can just stop by Monday Monday through Friday, and we'll give you a tour, introduce you to the kids. So we want the community to come out to see. If they support us with their donations, we want them to see where their donations are going. So first and foremost, if you have a child that could use our services, to contact us, and secondly, if you want to help in any way, shape, or form, to contact us too.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all this great information that you've shared with us today. And if anybody wants to contact you guys, the information will be up on our screen at the end of the program. And hopefully you'll get some people that want to be involved, or people who need your services will contact you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm glad that you came. So no matter that the cards you were dealt or your current state of health, remember that you have the power to take charge of your health. So never give up and never stop learning. The solution you seek may be just around the corner. If you can join me in a toast to our viewers, I wish you a wonderful today and an even better tomorrow. Here's to your health.
To your health.